Treyarch just fixed Lightmen, so today we're breaking down every single augment, finding the best augment combinations, which includes an augment combination that allows you to one-shot special and even elite enemies at health cap. This is how Lightmen actually works. As always with these analytical videos, be sure to use the chapters below to skip to whatever section you're most interested in, or to the end for the final results. I'm not gonna lie to you beautiful people, Lightmen has to be one of the most straightforward ammo mods, or really any sort of things we've tested on the channel. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into basic Lightmen. Bullets deal light damage. Each bullet has a chance to transform a normal or special enemy's health into a healing glyph that moves to nearby injured allies. So pretty straightforward. I'm sure we've all seen Lightmen activate. It kills a zombie instantly. It drops that one healing glyph as they call it. And if you're injured, the glyph will actually come towards you. But let's jump into the specifics here. The cooldown of Lightmen is about 25 seconds. However, I want to say after testing, I think this is like this is my third ammo mod that I'm testing. I think I have a fundamental misunderstanding of how the cooldown works. I think there is a cooldown, but I think there's an additional hidden effect that gives you a probability of it activating that I don't know how to figure out, well, easily. But generally speaking, the fastest I got this to activate was 25 seconds. Obviously, when it does activate, it's only going to kill the one zombie it gets activated on. This is a very defensive ability. Luckily, the glyph duration is fairly long at 30 seconds, and the range is decently generous too, with a 6.5 meter radius. It is pretty difficult to test ranges here in Black Ops 6, but luckily you can ping stuff, and I got about 6.5 meters where it was starting to come at me. When it comes to the damage, this is basically not important for base Lightmen, because the damage you're dealing with 5 out of the 6 of these augments is basically to just the one zombie. But it does deal 200% of the base health of a zombie, so you are 100% going to get a kill when you activate this on a zombie. In terms of the health gain that you get from getting one of these glyphs, you are going to get 50 points. And the reason I have this 40 health per second with a 6-second delay, that has nothing to do with Lightmen, and that is just your base healing speed. There's an augment that changes how fast you heal, so that's an important thing to pay attention to. But it's good to know that your base health has a 6-second delay from the last time you're hit, at least without quick revive. And then when you start regenerating, you're going to regenerate 40 health per second. So that's just going to come into play when we get into some augments later down the road. For special enemies, you will get the normal 200% base health. So same exact activation as the regular zombie. However, when it comes to the Doppelgast, which is weak to light ammo, you're going to get a little bit more of a bonus. And when it comes to the Mangler, because of his armor, just like all of the other stuff that's based on damage, it's going to be a little bit less than 200%. But generally speaking, you're going to get this 200% base health, same as the default damage you get if it were to be activated with a regular zombie. It's just the special enemies that we have their own unique modifier, and we'll get into those. And of course, by default, doesn't do anything to elite enemies, and now we can start getting into the augments. Starting with longer life, the healing glyph's lifetime is increased. So by default, that glyph is going to last 30 seconds on the ground, so long as you're not taking damage and you're not consuming it. With longer life, you are going to get a whopping 5 additional seconds from its base. It's not much, but 5 seconds is a decent amount of time in Call of Duty Zombies time. Moving on to extra strength. The healing glyph replenishes more health when consumed. So when you are injured and you consume the healing glyph, normally it's 50 health points you're getting back immediately, but with extra strength, you're getting a whole 62 health points back, which is a 25% increase. See what I mean? This is all pretty straightforward so far. And Express Remedy increases the range that the glyph will move to an ally. Once again, the base range is 6.5 meters, and with Express Remedy, that is all the way up to 9.5 meters, a 50% increase, which again is a pretty decent range. Even when using the base Lightmen, that 6.5 meter range, when I was training in the same room or the same area, I was naturally getting these glyphs whenever I was injured. And getting a whole extra 3 meters, or that 50% increase, is pretty noticeable. And that's where the easy stuff ends, because now we need to get into some wacky stuff. Starting with dual action. Consuming a healing glyph will temporarily allow you to heal faster. This is one of the augments that was broken with Lightmen over the past couple weeks, and Treyarch did indeed fix this. However, it might not just be in the way you think. You see, as we said, your base healing speed is 40 health per second with a 6-second delay, so I thought with dual action, we would see a decrease in this 6-second delay, But that's not what happens. We still have the 6-second delay, but we get a 50% increase in our health per second regeneration speed. So you're still going to have to wait the same amount of time before your health regeneration kicks in, but once it does kick in, you are going to heal faster, which is exactly what the augment says. But in terms of usefulness, of all of the health mechanics and the health regeneration mechanics, the speed in which I'm gaining back health is not really that bad. It's really not that important to me. This effect does last 16.5 seconds, which is pretty good, especially given the fact that the default glyph duration is 30 seconds and the cooldown is only 25 seconds. You can really string together these glyphs on the ground to constantly have a health pool both in the play space and something that heals you faster for 16.5 seconds. This is a really passive ability, but it is useful. Antibiotic. The healing glyph now damages enemies that touch it, but its lifetime is reduced. Now, this is where things start to get interesting, because this was one of the augments that was bugged in the previous update, but when you use Antibiotic, the glyph that falls on the ground is capable of dealing damage to zombies. In terms of how much damage, well, it's okay. You are still going to deal 200% of the base health of the initial zombie that you activate Lightmend on. That doesn't change, but zombies that walk over the glyph now will take 50% of the base health per tick. And here's where I'm going to be honest and just show you some gameplay for you to help me figure out how this works. I'm going to show you a clip of me activating Lightmend and then running like 2 zombies over the Lightmend glyph. And as you can see, only 1 zombie takes damage at a time. So I thought, okay, this is like a 1 zombie at a time thing. Kind of disappointing, but whatever. But then I went and I hoarded up a group of zombies fresh from the start of the round, activated Lightmend, and what do you know, I'm seeing a ton of different damage numbers. I do not have the slightest idea why 2 zombies in close enough proximity aren't taking damage from Lightmend, but then when a whole group of zombies is together, they are all taking damage from Lightmend. I don't know if the range is just like super small. You've got to be like standing right on top of it and like the 2 zombies just weren't. But from what I could see, from what the damage numbers are telling me, yes, you can deal this 50% base health per tick to multiple zombies, even though it seems to be kind of picky about it. This also does apply to special enemies by default. Running mimics and running doppelgasts over this Lightmend glyph will cause them to deal damage, which is pretty good, especially given the fact that the doppelgasts, like we said, are weak to Lightmend, so this is going to increase how much damage they take. Again, we'll get to that. That's kind of fun. That's kind of nutty if I'm going to spoil it for you. But there is a second part. Outside of the damage that it's doing, it will reduce the amount of time the glyph is active for 5 seconds per tick. Now you might say, oh, if it's active for 30 seconds and it's 5 seconds per tick, then that's 6 whole ticks that you get this Lightmend to be active. Unfortunately, that's not really true because the damage ticks at about 1 second per tick. So there's a little bit of a delay in between the ticks. And believe it or not, it's really difficult to get a line of zombies to run over the one specific area of the Lightmend that it needs to be, plus not taking any damage. That was the biggest thing about Antibiotic, not taking any damage so that the glyph doesn't rush to you. That's pretty difficult. But I will say, if we ever find any sort of traditional like catwalk strategies like from Doris, having Antibiotic might not be a bad idea, where you're funneling zombies into one specific area and having that Lightmend glyph just sit there dealing damage to the line of zombies. It could be pretty useful. But then again, if you're sitting in a corner and then a parasite like snipes you, then the glyph is going to rush to you and heal you and all that sort of stuff. But overall, I really want to like Antibiotic, but that 50% base health per tick sounds really good on paper, but the range and the amount of zombies it affects just isn't good enough for me to run. However, we still have one more augment to talk about. Big game. Lightmend can activate on elite enemies, dropping 3 more healing glyphs. That's right, there is a lot of good stuff about Big Game. And as you can clearly see, you activate Lightmend on an elite enemy and you get those 3 additional glyphs. And those 3 additional glyphs pair perfectly with any of the minor augments. You can make it last longer, heal you for extra health points, or have it come to you from a wider radius. So that in and of itself is really good for Lightmend. If you love having as much health on the map as possible, big game is phenomenal, especially if you're worried about those elite enemies. Now, in terms of damage, I thought this was going to do the same like 200 base health like it did for the special enemies by default, and it was just going to apply now to all of the elite enemies. And so I crunched the numbers, and turns out I was wrong. I'll slow this footage down for you here. This is me activating Light Mend on an amalgam, which is very important because amalgams are not weak to light damage at all. This is very vanilla plain experiment. So I'm shooting the amalgam, and you can see that once Light Mend gets activated, and you can see 4 big numbers, that is the Light Mend activation damage. Now, I took one of those numbers and figured that it was 300% of the base zombie health. However, that was just one of the 4 different damage numbers that appeared. And according to all of my calculations, 300 times the base zombie health multiplied by 4 different times it's being applied to this elite enemy, that is a total of 1,200% of the base zombie health, which is 12 times the base zombie health going up against the elites. This is absurd. On the other hand, practically speaking, in the early-ish rounds before round 30, this number isn't going to be terribly big. It's going to deal a good third or even a quarter, or even maybe a half as you're approaching the 30s of the elite zombie health. And that's actually pretty darn good, I should say. And of course, when you activate this on the Abomination, because of its armor, it's pretty terrible. But in terms of amalgams, it's awesome. But when it comes to the Elder Disciple, freshly released in Shattered Veil, if you didn't know, they are weak to light damage, which means when Light Mend activates on an Elder Disciple, they will receive an extra bonus damage because they're weak to Light Mend on this activation. Not only that, the activation is increased by vulnerability. So if we take a look down here, you could see that in terms of Doppelgast and Disciples, the elemental damage that they take, they're going to take a bonus 50% damage, which is increased to 75% increased in damage from the base, obviously. And the activation, when Light Mend first activates on a Doppelgast or an Elder Disciple, if you have vulnerability on the Elder Disciple with that elemental damage, you are dealing 2,100% damage of the base zombie health, 21 times the base zombie health. And I know what you're thinking, Donuts, how did we go from 21 times base zombie health from 12 times base zombie health? And the reason is that with vulnerability and this elemental damage, you can't just add 75% to this to get, 1,275% base zombie health. That's not how it works. These are multipliers. So you'll take this 12 times and then you'll multiply it by this 1.75 because the game is going to go, okay, we're going to do 12 times the base damage. Oh, now we need to add on to this multiplier here. So 0.75, so 75% is 1.75. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So you have to multiply this 12 times 1.75. And if you do that, you get 21 times the damage. Again, 21 times the base zombie damage. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I do not believe these numbers. Like looking at them now, I've done the math so many times. I've sat here like, is this right? Is this right? This is right. And I'll be honest, this was one of the last things I figured out. I was testing out the elites, one of the last things I ever tested out. And I was like, what does this look like on health cap? So I went on Shattered Veil and I went to round 55, which is health cap. And zombies have 50,000 health at health cap. And if we're dealing 21 times that, that means we are dealing over 1 million in damage. And we now know that the elites have 1 million health. We should be able to literally one-shot these disciples. So I went on health cap. I spent hours getting there. And then the Elder Disciple shows up, and this is what happens. Isn't that insane? Isn't it insane that you can just one-shot the elite enemies on a map with big game if you are lucky to activate Light Mend on it? That is worth noting here. When it comes to testing out Light Mend and all of these ammo mods on these specials and elite enemies, it seems like I said earlier, there is a secret hidden mechanic on this cooldown that these ammo mods have that just completely way more difficult to activate than a normal zombie. A lot of the time when I was shooting a Doppelgast or a Disciple or even a Mimic, it took me so long to get Light MEND to activate, even though I knew that 25-second cooldown was far past. So that's where I'm thinking there's this like second hidden activation probability statistic. And I guess this might be a good time to show you now. I did put on Chill Berry from Vulnerable Bean, which decreases the cooldown speed of your ammo mods, and I couldn't get it past 25 seconds. I don't know if this was broken. I don't know if Elemental Pop works in a different way. I'm between you and me, I'm really not happy with my cooldown activations this time. I want to redo how I test it, but I am confident the base is 25 seconds, but I don't know how Chill Berry works. I might need to deep dive into Elemental Pop next. But anyway, these numbers, the 1200%, the 12 times the base zombie health, I know it's like big numbers and I'm really excited about this now, but I want you to think about the base zombie health. This isn't, and I want to preface this is not 21 times your damage that your gun is doing. You can't take this with like a sniper rifle and oh my goodness, you're going to do 21 times the sniper rifle damage. That's not what's happening here. This is just like Dark Flare. It's just like Deadwire. It's the base zombie health. You could put Light MEND on a gray rarity unpack-a-punched weapon. And if you have big game equipped, you can one-shot the Elder Disciple on health cap because it is just looking at the base zombie health and it's doing 21 times that when you activate Light MEND. The ammo mod activation damage is completely independent from the elemental damage that your gun is doing. And I really hope I explained that because keen-eyed viewers might have seen that this stacks with double tap. Now, what stacks with double tap? It's the elemental damage that your gun does. The activation, in other words, the one zombie that gets insta-killed with that 200% base, that is not affected with double tap or by double tap. But in terms of the Doppelgast and the Disciples, when you're shooting them with Light MEND, with that light damage, that elemental damage, you're already getting that 50% increase in damage. If you put on Vulnerable Bean, you're going to get another 25% extra damage to total 75% damage. But then you can take that and put on double tap augments and like all of the double tap augments, double impact, double time, double standard, double or nothing. And that will all work with your elemental damage. And this, by the way, is not exclusive to Light MEND. This works with all of the other elemental weaknesses with double tap. This is just the first ammo mod I'm covering after double tap has been released. So what I did is I ran a shotgun and I put on double standard because shotguns don't have headshot multipliers. So your body damage is your regular damage. So double standard is basically double damage. And then I put on double or nothing. And then I got the elemental damage in Vulnerable Bean. And I was able to take care of these elites really darn well. But again, that's more so to do with the elemental damage, and you could do that with any sort of elemental weakness. It's not exclusive to Light MEND. Now, after all of this excitement, when thinking about, oh man, what is the best, most overpowered thing for Light MEND to be, or what augments you should run, it's kind of weird. I feel like these Light MEND augments don't really change the game all that much, but because they don't really change the game all that much, you kind of have the freedom to use this however you want to. Now, perhaps the most obvious one that I did manage to cover was Antibiotic with longer life. And how does that interact with one another? Well, as you can see, it's exactly the same thing. You get 35 seconds and it's just the 5 seconds per tick, and it's the same damage that this did back here. Having that additional life does mean that you might be able to get an extra tick of damage. So that could be your best pairing if you want this to be a real true general offensive ammo mod. And I don't know, maybe it's just my playstyle, but when an ammo mod activates, it activates when you're shooting zombies and dealing damage to zombies. I want an ammo modification that helps me deal damage to zombies. But Light MEND is inherently a defensive thing, and so I just don't think it really fits in my playstyle. But I will say a lot of people, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, if you're like one of us who absolutely love Turtle Shell, having Light MEND is not a bad idea. Zombies are dealing 50 to 70 to 90 hit points of health into the later rounds, into the 50s at least. And so the ability for you to heal, you know, what is this, 50 health points or 62 health points, that is a very, very good strategy. That's an extra hit or two depending on what round you're at. And then you pair that up with big game, you're dealing some good damage to those zombies. You've got 3 glyphs to run around with now. That's not a bad choice for that defensive thing. Or maybe you want to do longer life with 35 seconds and dual action, so you just have all of these glyphs on the ground, or maybe do longer life with the 3 glyphs with the big game, and you are just swimming in all of these healing glyphs, so that way whenever you take damage, you have a glyph waiting for you, and the cooldown is substantially shorter than the glyph duration, so there's always something to heal you right away. There's a lot of different options, and strange as it is, because this is kind of a weaker thing in the game, I think this is arguably one of the more preference-based or versatile augment combinations you can get. I could see every single person having a different take on what they want to run. Obviously, I'm thinking damage, so I'm thinking Antibiotic to deal damage to the Horde, or I'm thinking big game because, man, I want to one-shot those disciples on Shattered Veil, and I want more healing glyphs on the ground just in case, and then maybe I do extra strength because I'm running Turtle Shell, or maybe I run Antibiotic with longer life because, like I said, you know, I want to deal extra damage. There's just a lot of flexibility here, and I love it. So let's recap. Base Light Mend, when activated, will kill 1 zombie and drop a healing glyph that will heal you for 50 points of health if you are injured and within a 6.5 meter radius of it. Antibiotic makes that healing glyph deal 50% of the base health of the zombies in its area per tick. However, with every tick of damage that this healing glyph does, it will lose 5 seconds of its duration. Big Game will allow Lightmen to activate on elite enemies. By default, this is 12 times the base zombie health, but each elite enemy is going to react to this differently, even though with the right augments, you can get this to one-shot Elder Disciples on Shattered Veil, which I just want to remind you, paired with Vulnerability and the elemental damage, this gets up to 21 times the base zombie health. It's insane. Big Game also releases an additional 3 healing glyphs for you to use. Dual Action increases the rate at which you regenerate. Absorbing one of these glyphs will cause a green effect to go around your screen for 16.5 seconds, where your base regeneration speed is 40 health per second. This will be increased to 60 health per second. However, you will still have the same regeneration delay. It's still going to take 6 seconds for you to start that increased regeneration speed. Longer Life will increase the glyph duration from 30 seconds to 35 seconds. Extra Strength will increase the amount of health you get back right away by 25%, going from 50 health points to 62 health points. Express Remedy will increase the range of the healing glyph that gets absorbed to you from 6.5 meter radius to a 9.5 meter radius. And just as a reminder, this is our first ammo mod elemental damage video after double tap. The elemental damage you deal from your weapon, and especially with Vulnerability, does stack with all of the double tap augments. Not just for Lightmen, but for all of the ammo mod and the elemental damage. It's really fun. In terms of augment combinations, I recommend, like I said, if you want a more general damage dealing augment combination, Antibiotic and Longer Life is going to be really good, dealing damage to base zombies, but you're having an extended life of that glyph, so you're able to deal more damage to the regular zombies. If you want to deal a lot of good damage to amalgams on high rounds and potentially one-shot Elder Disciples on high rounds, you are definitely going to want to run Big Game. Even if it's on a secondary weapon, you're using Deadwire on your primary weapon, you switch to this Light Mend weapon in your secondary, and then you take out the Elder Disciple. Very, very viable. But if you're looking for more of a general, I just want to heal and have the most health, Dual Action will allow you to regenerate your speed faster, but Big Game will drop 3 additional glyphs for you, which is pretty good. And then either Longer Life or Extra Strength would be really awesome to run if you're just looking for extreme health. But ultimately, like I said, this might be one of the most personal preference augment combination things we've ever done. So tell me, what augment combinations do you prefer? Did you know about the absurd ability of Big Game with Lightmen before this video? And are you aware of just how underrated Shadow Rift is? If you're curious, be sure to check out this video and stay beautiful.